and welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, Brian Hines. And this is my satellite show to my review show, Comic Book Issues, where I take a month's worth of comics and give you reviews all at once. Little quickie reviews that I don't go terribly in depth into. And where the hell is the regular Comic Book Issues? I hear many of you wondering, well, my computer has been down and I'm probably not getting a new one until I get my tax refund, so I'm using my father's laptop, which doesn't have great processing power, and beyond that, I'm doing you-know-who right now, which always takes up a ton of time, but I'm going to try and keep on top of it this year so I can get back to comic book issues sooner rather than 2 months after Doctor Who is over, which is usually how it usually goes. But I've got future episodes planned, so bear with me. We will be getting back to the full reviews, and that's why I did the pull list, because I wanted to at least do one comic book related show a month, and that this gives me that opportunity. So let's dive right in. It's the first pull list of 2020, but we're going to start with the last week of 2019 because that's how the pull list works. I do most of a month, but then I do the last week of the previous month so then I could put this episode out before the month is up. So we're going to start with the last week of December. And it's Marvel Incoming #1, which is basically the only release that came out at that time because the comic book companies don't want to flood the market with a bunch of comics when you're in the middle of your Christmas holiday. Marvel Incoming is similar to Marvel Comics #1000, which came out a while ago, and actually continues that storyline where we were following who was wearing the Infinity Mask. The person wearing the mask, we don't find out who, comes across a confusing crime scene. The person wearing that mask, and we don't find out who, comes across a very confusing crime scene and brings in other heroes who bring in more heroes, and they all try and figure out this bizarre murder, and it's actually paving the way for the future Empire event that's going to be in Avengers and Fantastic Four, where Changeling from Young Avengers takes over his parents' empires. His mom was a Skrull, his dad was Captain Marvel, so he's going to be the leader of both empires. They're going to unite under him. That's what the Empire event will be about. Now, there's some real grade A talent who worked on Incoming, and not just two-page stories like they did for Marvel Comics 1000, but it's not really long stories either, like over at DC in a Detective Comics 1000 or Wonder Woman 750. These are about maybe 4 or 5 pages, and then they lead into the next story, and then even a few of them don't have anything to do with Empire. They're setting up separate events. But this book has writers like Greg Pak, Kelly Thompson, Dan Slott, artists like Humberto Ramos, Jim Chung, once again drawing Changeling from Young Avengers, so that's cool, and Wiccan. And also Carlos Pacheco, who did the JLA JSA hardcover with Jeff Johns. As I said, there's some minor setups for other Marvel events. Venom's space battle with other symbiotes is referenced. Franklin Richards going to join the X-Men on Krakoa because he is a mutant, one of the most powerful mutants around. And even Iron Man 2020, which was a character created back in the 70s or 80s, but since it's 2020, they're bringing him into current continuity as Tony Stark's long-lost brother, Arno Stark. Ultimately, though, this is a very expensive book because it's $10, but you get a lot of story by some very good talent. It's a decent read, but it is primarily set up for Empire and all the events that are going to be coming in 2020, and you can enjoy those events without having to read this. So this is good, but it's also unnecessary. And so now it's the first comic of 2020, and it's probably one you haven't heard of. It's called B.A.D.A.S.S #1. It's drawn and written by Adrian Nelson, and it's published by Antarctic Press, who put out one of my favorite comic books, Gold Digger. Now, this is just sort of a Men in Black idea. B.A.D.A.S.S is an acronym standing for Bureau of Alien Detection and Supernatural Sightings. We're going to jump in head first as we're entering into the mind of a soldier for B.A.D.A.S S who is attacked by an alien parasite, and a psychic is working with him to piece together what happened. We also meet Cece, who's a gigantic female muscular alien who's come to Earth to train B.A.D.A.S.'s newest super soldier, because they have a few humans on Earth with superpowers. Visually, this book isn't bad. Nelson is certainly competent with his art, but there's not a ton of imagination with the alien designs. There's the big alien, there's the rock alien, there's the worm alien. I mean, things we've seen a lot of times before. The style of the book is more intriguing than the actual art, because the book is in black and white, but Nelson makes limited use of color. Like, it's all gray tones, but then one alien will have yellow eyes. During attack scenes, there'll be like sprays of blood here and there, and red cuts on the face, green electronic screens. It's interesting color choices that lead to some pizzazz in the otherwise drab gray tones. But there is also an amateurish feel to the book because, I caught a really obvious spelling error on one page. It's so obvious I'm wondering why an editor didn't catch this, or if the lettering was done via like audio transcription, like they read the lines and then the computer prints it out and they just copy and paste it in. See, at some point a voice is saying that they were lucky something would up there. And obviously you might say they were lucky something wound up there. So how do you miss something that obvious? So that was really amateurish. But that said, this book feels solid and the art's good enough that I want to check out issue 2. But I didn't find this in stores. I got this on Comixology. Antarctic has this habit of immediately lowering the price of their digital books after they've been on there for a few weeks. So if you want to read this, when an issue comes out, wait a couple of weeks. I only paid 99 cents to read B.A.D.A.S. #1, and at that price, it's definitely worth it. Now, for the second week, the third review of this story, we're going to talk about Star #1. Now, I know nothing about the character of Star in Marvel Comics. I know she was a hero who was introduced in Captain Marvel and ended up being kind of like Captain Marvel's opposite number. You know, that evil version of the character who's not 100% like them, but enough alike them that they're kind of like that dark reflection, like Sabretooth to Wolverine, if you will. She's also a Kree-human hybrid who gets powers, and she turns the public against Captain Marvel until Captain Marvel kind of outs her as the villain and killed her. Captain Marvel at one point has to rip her own heart out to survive something done to her, and she realizes since she survived it, so can Star, so she rips Star's heart out, and that takes away her powers and she gets imprisoned. So issue 1, written by Kelly Thompson, who seems to be writing everything at Marvel these days, and artists Javier Pina and Felipe Andrade launch her into her own miniseries. It's a 5-issue miniseries. When we join her, Star somehow already escaped prison and dealing with the trauma of almost being murdered by Captain Marvel. She's hanging out at a supervillain bar when she gets into a fight with Titania, who's an old She-Hulk villain. She's got this strange new power after losing her Kree abilities that she doesn't quite know how to control yet. So she picks a fight with Titania, gets her ass kicked, and then gets knocked out and kidnapped by Loki. Loki explains that somehow Star has bonded with the reality gem from the Infinity Gauntlet. We're not really sure how that happened. Maybe that happened in the Captain Marvel book. I'm not sure. She fries Loki, gets free, and tries to get Jessica Jones to find out who's after her to get the stone. But Jessica, she didn't realize, is Captain Marvel's best friend, so she tries to kick Star's ass. Smackdown ensues and is broken up at the end by the Scarlet Witch. While Star may only be a C-list character, there's a lot of B and A-list characters who guest star in here, and that's enough to keep you interested in the first issue at least. Also, I expected this to be a hero book, so I was kind of surprised that we were following around a villain, and also that this villain had this immense power, but no idea how to use it or what even to do with it was very refreshing. She was kind of teaching herself how to use the reality powers. For me, coming into this book, I had no idea who the character was, but the art's good, and I enjoyed the story I read, so I'm definitely going to be down for issue #2. Now, for week 4, it's Venom The End. Now, The End has been a sort of an imprint, although not really, that shows the final stories of characters. It started with the Hulk. They've done Punisher The End. They've done the Marvel Universe The End. They've done 2 The Ends for Fantastic Four. This month, they decided to do a whole bunch of one-shots, and one of them was Venom. Now, this one-shot was written by Adam Warren of Empowered fame and drawn by Jeffrey Cruz. This story follows what part Venom plays in the end of the universe. Okay? And it actually kind of reads as like a textbook. It's a historical document that's being told to us through the comic book format. Somebody's, at the end of the story, we find out who somebody is saying, here's what happened from Venom onto the end of this story. So it's a little dry. There's no dialogue. There's no, inner thoughts other than when things are relayed to us through the course of this retelling. So in that way, the story's a little dry. We find out that Venom tried to keep Eddie Brock alive. The symbiote tried to keep him alive for as long as it could, till like he was like the last man alive. And then eventually becomes a sort of genetic arc for all organic life. And once it starts absorbing people, mutants especially, it can tap into their powers. And eventually he goes to war with machine life, which if you've been reading Powers of X, House of X, you know that eventually there's all these robotic empires coming towards Earth. And so artificial life versus organic life, and organic life just basically has Venom as its protector now. And even once it's all dead, all organic life in the universe is just Venom and its symbiotes who can then channel whatever superpowers they need from the hosts that they've absorbed in Venom's lifetime. Now, like I said, the book reads a bit dry since there's no dialogue in it, but it is a kind of a fascinating sort of historical drama, albeit one set in our future. Our future is the historical drama that's being relayed to us from the even more distant future. Basically, a slobbering cannibalistic monster will one day be the only hope for organic life's continuing existence in reality. It's an interesting read, if not particularly fun, with decent art that mimics Adam Warren's style, but I really wish Adam had just drawn the book himself. It's written by Adam Warren, and it almost looks like Adam Warren, but it's not. This was an interesting read. It was an experiment. I don't think it's a successful experiment, and I don't think you need to read it. But I don't regret reading Venom The End, and I don't think you will if you decide to pick it up. But if you're expecting a normal Venom story where he's eating people, fighting superheroes, that's not this. I mean, he does do those things, but it's far less entertaining. And the final comic for January of 2020 is Superman number 19. Well, last issue, Bendis pulled the trigger, and now the entire world knows that Clark Kent is Superman. He wasn't outed. He chose to reveal his secret identity to the world. And now this issue starts to deal with the fallout. Lois, Jimmy, and Clark all have a sit-down with Perry White, a practical discussion for how Clark can continue to keep reporting for the Daily Planet, how that's all going to work, how future stories will be reported. Also, then everyone else who works at the Daily Planet has to kind of deal with it. How Metropolis has to deal with it. One of the more important moments is when the gossip reporter who initially took the picture of Lois kissing Superman that started this whole thing confronts Clark in her decision to publish that picture. Kind of reinforces to Clark that he made the right decision because now Metropolis seems at peace and he expected there to be rioting or hysteria or death threats to his loved ones, but the city's quiet, and in his mind it's signaling that Metropolis has accepted this and is okay with it, whereas like if Bruce Wayne came out as Batman, it would all be chaos. He then goes to meet the Justice League and see how they deal with his coming out, but there's just like a 2-page spread of all the heroes waiting for him, and that's going to be its own separate one-shot. And then since Superman is the cosmic book, the second part of the story is the United Planets looking to find a place to set up a home base of operations and getting attacked by the alien warlord Mongol, and Superman arriving to fight him, and they get into a fight, and that's where the story ends. That part is very meh. Now, the art by Ivan Reyes is consistently excellent, although I question why Harley Quinn was included in the Justice League, because in current continuity, isn't she part of the Suicide Squad? And they're hardly heroes, but she's popular right now and has a movie coming out, so she kind of looked like she was added in later, so maybe that was the case. Still, Bendis has been better with more personal stories. He's been better with Clark than Superman. So the first half of this is better than we normally get in the Superman title. That said, the second half is the usual kind of big fight space stuff, which I'm not really a fan of, but there you go. This was half a good read, half the normal stuff we get in this book that I'm not really a big fan of, but it's good enough that I read it anyway. So this was a better than average issue. All right, my friends, well, that's the first month of 2020. That was January. Join me next month when we'll be talking about February of 2020. This was a long one. We had 5 weeks to go over. I think February being such a short month, we'll be back to 4 comics. But until then, hey, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and be sure to check out my Patreon at patreon.com/LastAngryGeek. Thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, this is The Pull List, and I'm your host, Brian Hines.